It's 3 p.m. on July 1st, 1863. Just outside Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, two Union corps, one under Doubleday and the other under Schurz, are facing off against two Confederate corps, one under A.P. Hill and the other under Ewell. Since the early morning, the Union line had held McPherson's Ridge and then Oak Ridge. By now, though, A.P. Hill's corps at Hare's Ridge is reinitiating an attack on McPherson's Ridge. In the center, Daniel's brigade is holding his position strong, and Ramseur is pressing at Oak Ridge. And on the rebel left, Jubal Early's division is in position to break the Union flank. Suddenly, the Union line, which it held for so long, is in a very precarious position. "3 p.m., July 1st, 1863. General Winfield Scott Hancock is riding from General Meade's post at Taneytown, Maryland, towards Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. At present, Howard is in field command of the Union Army at Gettysburg, where the morning skirmish has evolved into a major confrontation. Events are reaching a turning point near Gettysburg. We will zoom in to Gettysburg. The town of Gettysburg is here. McPherson's Ridge, shown as MR for short, is to the west. Oak Ridge, shown as OR for short, is in the center. Barlow Knoll, or BK, is on the Union right. Howard has made Cemetery Hill on the south of town his headquarters. However, the demand for troops on the ever-increasing line stretching from McPherson's Ridge on the left to Oak Ridge in the center to Barlow Knoll on the right means that only two brigades, Smith and Coster, are left to protect Cemetery Hill. Howard has two corps on the field, Doubleday to the northwest of town and Schurz to the north of town. At 3 p.m., Howard is desperate for Slocum or Sickles' corps to arrive to reinforce his position. Facing the blue lines are A.P. Hill's rebel corps amassed at Hare's Ridge here. Ewell's corps has come in from the north. Robert E. Lee is on Hare's Ridge. The Union line has held since morning, but by 3 p.m. the situation has grown dire. While the Union line on McPherson and Oak Ridge have repulsed multiple attacks through the day, a wave of fresh rebel units are now in position. From the west, Heath's division, damaged from an earlier attack but now reformed, and Pender's fresh division are advancing from Hare's Ridge toward McPherson's Ridge. In the center, Daniel's brigade of Rhodes' division, with elements from previous attacks, stubbornly maintains a position on McPherson's Ridge here. On the rebel left, Rhodes has Doles' brigade in position. Doles has an opportunity to work in tandem with Jubal Early's division, freshly arrived here on the Harrisburg Road. The Union right, Barlow's division, is set on a knoll here, is in a very precarious situation. Barlow's flank is vulnerable to Jubal Early. Right now, the Union right flank at Barlow Knoll is the most vulnerable spot in the Union line. Let's zoom in to the Union right. I have removed some of the modern residential development to make the map more like 1863. If we look at a LiDAR map, we can see Barlow Knoll in purple here. Barlow Knoll rises to 530 feet. Rock Creek is here in blue. The creek in front of the heights is at 475 feet. So an attack from the creek up to the heights has a rise of 55 feet. We will return to a satellite map. Schurz has one division at the knoll under Barlow. In zoomed-in maps like this, corps commanders will be shown on horseback, like Schurz here, while division commanders will be in italics, like Barlow. Brigades will be in normal font. Barlow has recently advanced his division to the knoll here, thinking the high ground advantageous. Today, this knoll retains the name Barlow Knoll. In addition to the woods in front of the heights, Barlow may have also considered Rock Creek here as a defensive obstacle in his favor. So Barlow's division forms the Union right. Barlow's two brigades are under von Gilsa and Ames. In von Gilsa's brigade, the regiments are arranged with the 54th New York at right front along the creek, the 68th New York to its left. The 153rd Pennsylvania is set behind them on the knoll. The 41st New York, part of von Gilsa's brigade, had remained at Emmetsburg, so von Gilsa had a smaller brigade with only 3 regiments. Ames' brigade has 4 regiments. The 17th Connecticut is positioned on the knoll, with 4 companies detached and placed on the Harrisburg Road at the bridge. The 25th Ohio is on the western portion of the knoll. The 75th Ohio follows to the left, followed by the 107th Ohio further left. Barlow places Wilkinson's battery on the knoll. Schurz realizes how exposed Barlow is on the right flank. Early is in position. Schurz's fears about his right flank are quickly realized at 3 p.m. It's not long before Barlow is in serious danger. At this time, Jubal Early's division is in position on the Harrisburg Road. The road is shown in yellow, and sometimes it is referred to as the Heidlersburg Road. Early's brigades are, from his perspective, Gordon on the right, Hayes in the center, and Avery extending off this vantage point to the left. Avery's brigade is sometimes shown as Hoke's brigade, but at Gettysburg the brigade is under Isaac Avery. Smith's brigade is in reserve down the road. Jones' battery is set below the Harrisburg Road in front of Avery's brigade. Early's position, even before a shot is fired, already extends beyond Barlow's flank. To make matters even more precarious for Barlow, Doles' brigade from Rhodes' division has moved in from the other side. Jones' battery fires on Barlow Knoll. The Union right flank is now under attack. Early's division can link with Doles' brigade. Early's division and Doles' brigade form an arc around Barlow Knoll. The rebel front, thwarted all day to this point, now has an opportunity. Barlow has incoming rebel lines from the north, northeast, and east. It's entirely possible that Barlow's division could be encircled and cut off. Schurz knows that he needs to pull Barlow back. But there will be no easy retreat. The fight is already underway. Jones' battery sounds from Early's position. Barlow's exposed flank is enfiladed on the knoll. Wilkinson's battery is pummeled. It returns fire with little effect. With Jones' battery hitting Barlow Knoll, the infantry attack is imminent. We will zoom out. Early's artillery is blasting Barlow Knoll. There is a gap between Barlow and Schimmelfennig's divisions. Schurz moves Shizanovsky's brigade from Schimmelfennig's division forward to plug this gap. We will zoom into the Union center at Oak Ridge. Paul's brigade is in line on Oak Ridge. The Mummersburg Road is at his front in yellow. His regiments from right to left are the 13th Massachusetts, the 104th New York, the 107th Pennsylvania, the 16th Maine, and the 94th New York. Facing them on the rebel side is Ramseur's North Carolinians. From Ramseur's right to left is the 14th North Carolina, the 30th North Carolina, the 2nd North Carolina, and the 4th North Carolina. Paul had recently halted Ramseur, but the rebels are determined to maintain a foothold on Oak Ridge. We will zoom out. Currently, on the Union right, Barlow is being bombarded. In the center, Paul and Ramseur exchange fire at Oak Ridge. We will zoom into McPherson's Ridge at the Chambersburg Pike. For orientation, the Chambersburg Pike is here in green. A railroad cut is here in yellow. The McPherson Barn is here in red, the namesake for the McPherson ridgelines. The ridgelines are shown here in purple. Stone's brigade and Daniel's brigade have been locked in a stalemate over these ridgelines. Daniel, with remaining elements from earlier rebel attacks, is successfully maintaining his position on McPherson's Ridge. Daniel is facing Stone to the south and defenders at Oak Ridge to the east, his alignment in the shape of an elbow. Daniel's regiments from his right to left are the 32nd North Carolina, the 45th North Carolina, the 2nd North Carolina Battalion, the 43rd North Carolina at the elbow, the 3rd Alabama from O'Neill's brigade, then the 53rd North Carolina, and finally the 12th North Carolina, which remained from Iverson's earlier attack. On the other side of the railroad cut, Stone's Pennsylvania Bucktails are on the Chambersburg Pike, facing Daniel's right. Stone and Daniel have already clashed intensely at the railroad cut, but both lines have returned to their earlier positions. Stone had recently fallen wounded. Wister replaces him. Wister has had his brigades at an elbow, preparing for attacks from different sides, just like Daniel opposing him. At the Chambersburg Pike is the 143rd Pennsylvania on the right, and the 149th Pennsylvania in the center. On the left is the 150th Pennsylvania, That regiment bending at an angle at McPherson's Ridge, the right companies on the Chambersburg Pike facing north and the left regiments on the ridge line facing west. The Pennsylvania Bucktails are under increasing pressure. They've been receiving heavy artillery fire, and they are now preparing for attacks from multiple angles. In addition to Daniel's brigade across the railroad cut, Heath's division is coming up against McPherson Ridge from the west. We will zoom out. The renewed rebel attack is underway. At the Union right, Doles' brigade from Rhodes' division and Gordon's brigade from Early's division are approaching Barlow Knoll. Ramseur is hitting the Union center, and Heath's division is within striking distance of the Union left. Heath has the opportunity to link up with Daniel's brigade on McPherson's Ridge, forming a long line across the entire front. Herbst Woods, shown in green on the Union left, is about to be attacked by Heath. We will zoom into the Union left and switch to a west-facing vantage point. We are facing west. McPherson's Ridge is here in blue. Herbst Woods is here. The Chambersburg Pike is to the right in yellow. McPherson's barn is on the right, where Wister's brigade is positioned. Willoughby Run strings across the front in blue. Hare's Ridge, where A.P. Hill's corps is formed, is here. General Lee is here on Hare's Ridge. Meredith's Iron Brigade has held Herbst Woods all morning and afternoon. Through the day, the Iron Brigade has endured sporadic shelling. Biddle's brigade is on McPherson's Ridge behind and to the left of the Iron Brigade. Heath's division is approaching the Iron Brigade. This is the second time the Iron Brigade will face Heath today. The Iron Brigade had thrown back Archer's brigade earlier that day, but now Heath has two new brigades, not one, approaching Herbst Woods. Heath's brigades are Brockenbrough's Virginians on the rebel left and Pettigrew's North Carolinians on the right. A third brigade under Fry, previously under Archer, who was captured earlier that day, is advancing off this vantage point. This will be Fry's second attempt on McPherson's Ridge today. And behind Heath's division, obscured at the moment in the woods near Hare's Ridge, is Pender's division with another 3 brigades advancing forward. The Midwesterners at Herbst Woods are now grossly outnumbered. We will zoom out. The rebels now have changed the momentum of the fight. Heath's division is at the Union left, widening the arc that spreads from Herbst Woods to Oak Ridge to Barlow Knoll. Both rebel flanks extend beyond the Union lines. Thus, both Union flanks are about to be hit simultaneously while the center at Oak Ridge is under pressure. At the Union headquarters on Cemetery Hill, Howard directs Viedrich's battery there to respond to Ewell's artillery at Harrisburg Road. The range is too far for the available ammunition type, and the shells fall short. However, guns have now sounded from Cemetery Hill. General Howard has sent riders for General Slocum and General Sickles. Howard's message includes the note that his right flank is under attack and in danger of being turned and driven back. It's about 3:15. We will zoom in to Barlow Knoll. Barlow's division is now being besieged from 2 sides. Jones' battery has blasted Barlow's line. Jubal Early orders Gordon's brigade forward. Doles' brigade from Rhodes' division is also set in motion. These 2 rebel brigades, Doles from Rhodes' division and Gordon from Early's division, will turn the day in favor of the South. All regiments in both of these rebel brigades are from Georgia. Doles and Gordon are forming a junction against Barlow's Knoll, and a coordinated strike from 2 angles is underway. Doles' left flank is in concert with Gordon's right flank. Doles' brigade, from its left to right, is arranged the 12th Georgia, the 4th Georgia, the 44th Georgia, and the 21st Georgia on the right. Gordon's brigade, from its left to right, is the 38th Georgia, the 61st Georgia, the 13th Georgia, and the 31st Georgia on the right. The 60th Georgia is front and center, hitting straight on. The 26th Georgia stays back to support Jones' battery. Gordon's men splash across the creek and rush up towards the wooded high ground. Doles hits from the opposite side. Fire erupts on the knoll. We will zoom out. On the Union right, the situation only becomes more ominous for Barlow. Early has 2 more brigades, Hayes and Avery, in motion. Hayes and Avery can advance and cut off Barlow from behind. While the Union right is now in serious danger, the Union left has two divisions approaching McPherson's Ridge, Heth and Pender. Meredith's Iron Brigade is at Herbst Woods, which juts in a forward position from the rest of the Union left flank. Thus, the Iron Brigade will face the incoming rebel tide first. We will zoom in to the Iron Brigade at Herbst Woods and rotate to a west-facing vantage point. We are facing west at Herbst Woods. Herbst Woods is here in green, Willoughby Run is here in blue. Meredith's Iron Brigade is holding Herbst Woods. Arranged from left to right, they are the 19th Indiana, the 24th Michigan, and the 7th Wisconsin on the right. The 2nd Wisconsin is midway back through the timber. At about 3:20, Heth has two brigades, Pettigrew and Brockenbrough, at Willoughby Run. Brockenbrough's line from his left to right is the 55th Virginia, the 47th Virginia, then the 40th Virginia, and finally the 22nd Virginia Battalion on the brigade's right. Brockenbrough extends beyond Meredith's right. Pettigrew's brigade follows from left to right as the 26th North Carolina, the 11th North Carolina, the 47th North Carolina, and then the 52nd North Carolina on the right. Pettigrew extends beyond Meredith's left. Thus, Meredith is outflanked before a shot is fired. However, he has orders to hold his position at all hazards. Colonel Henry Morrow of the 24th Michigan tells his men to hold their fire until the rebel line is close. The rebels cross the creek. The Iron Brigade fires. Colonel Morrow of the 24th Michigan realizes the close range has little effect on the attacking rebels, who he says are yelling like demons. We will zoom back out and return to a north-facing vantage point. The entire line is now engaged, with Heth hitting Herbst Woods, Ramseur hitting Oak Ridge, and Doles and Early hitting Barlow Knoll. On the rebel left, Avery and Hayes are approaching Rock Creek. There are now two rebel brigades extending beyond the Union right flank. Barlow's position, the Union right, is in critical danger of being cut off and surrounded. Back at Cemetery Hill, Howard is receiving requests for reinforcements from both Schurz's Corps on the right and Doubleday's Corps on the left. Howard has one division in reserve, Steinwehr at Cemetery Hill. Howard knows he must hold Cemetery Hill, and he is already down to Steinwehr's two brigades, Smith and Coster, to hold that ground. Howard can see, though, that Schurz's right flank is about to fold. He dispatches Coster's brigade to support the vulnerable Union right flank. The brigade moves through town. Coster's brigade is not enough men to stop the unraveling of the Union right flank, but they might be able to slow the rebel advance and provide cover for the mass retreat that is most certainly about to occur. Thus, Howard only has one brigade, Smith's brigade, left on Cemetery Hill to protect his headquarters. Coster will support Schurz on the right. There are no other infantry to support Doubleday on the left. So Howard only has one more option for Doubleday. General Buford's cavalry troopers, who have been engaged off and on since daylight, are called up once more. We will zoom into Barlow Knoll. Gordon and Doles are firing on the high ground. Von Gilsa's brigade is on the high ground, firing back at Gordon. Ames' brigade exchanges fire with Doles. The rebel attack comes hard. It's immediately apparent that the knoll is too small to provide high ground support for Barlow's division. Ames' brigade on the left is without cover or high ground. Casualties mount fast. The blue lines shuffle. The 17th Connecticut moves to the front. Gordon pushes up the knoll. Musketry sounds. Von Gilsa's brigade takes flight. The retreating regiments crash into Ames' brigade down the line, causing confusion. The sudden rupture has thrown regimental command structure into disorder. Barlow's division is now retreating in disorder. The rebels have the heights. Barlow has been wounded. He is replaced by Ames. In turn, Ames' brigade is now under Andrew Harris. We will take a wider vantage point of the Union right. The modern town of Gettysburg has expanded into what were fields in 1863. I have removed some of the town's expansion to make the area more like 1863. For reference, Barlow Knoll, now secured by the rebels, is here. The old Harrisburg Road leading to town is here. The northern outskirts of town are on the bottom of the map. Barlow's division, now under Ames, is retreating toward town. 1/3 of Schurz's corps is now in retreat. Schimmelfennig's division here is now the right flank of the Union Army. Chisanovsky's brigade here is the new extreme right of the Union line. The retreat of Ames' division from the knoll has left Chisanovsky exposed. Doles and Gordon press the attack. They advance toward Chisanovsky. While Doles and Gordon approach Chisanovsky, Early has Avery and Hayes advance over Rock Creek. Hayes and Avery follow in the wake of the retreating blue columns down the old Harrisburg Road toward town. Meanwhile, General Schurz attempts to rally Ames' division north of town. Schurz wants to make the road junction north of town a rallying point, an effort to organize the retreat and slow the rebel advance. While Ames' division is in retreat, there is one Union brigade moving toward the front. Koster's brigade from Steinwehr's division is arriving through town. Koster advances up the Harrisburg Road. At this time, Schurz learns that Doubleday's corps needs reinforcements. Schurz, of course, is in no place to offer reinforcements. Apparently, Doubleday is also having challenges at this time. We will zoom out. While Early and Doles have put Ames' division in flight toward town, Heth is slamming into Doubleday on the left at Herbst Woods. We will zoom into Herbst Woods and rotate the view to a west-facing vantage point. We are at Herbst Woods facing west. At Herbst Woods, the situation becomes increasingly dire for the Iron Brigade. With no flanking support, the Iron Brigade is becoming isolated. Brockenbrough and Pettigrew's wings are advancing beyond Meredith's flanks. The 47th North Carolina and the 52nd North Carolina from Pettigrew's brigade have flanked the woods. On Brockenbrough's side, Virginia regiments pass along the length of the woods. The rebels throw lead from multiple sides into the woods. The Midwesterners in Meredith's line receive terrible losses. However, no change of orders comes for Meredith's Iron Brigade. Enfilading fire from the left thrashes the blue line. Yet the Iron Brigade keeps fighting. Colonel Robinson of the 7th Wisconsin reported, "The 24th and 19th on the left of the brigade were being badly cut up by superior numbers. The 2nd and 7th were keeping up a rapid fire upon the enemy in front, but, I think, without doing him much injury, as he was protected by the hill and timber. Pettigrew moves in. Meredith's left buckles. The 19th Indiana changes front to face North Carolina. More volleys are exchanged. Finally, the order is given to pull back. We will zoom out and switch back to a north-facing direction. The Iron Brigade pulls back from Herbst Woods to McPherson's Ridge, adjoining Biddle on its left and Witster on its right. Heth, with Pender following behind, continues the attack on McPherson's Ridge. It's 3:45. Back at Cemetery Hill, General Howard is observing the breakdown on his right flank. With Ames' division withdrawing, Howard realizes he needs to get Schurz's corps back onto high ground before Early's attack cuts him off. Howard sends an order off to General Schurz telling him to withdraw to Cemetery Hill. But Howard wants to avoid a mass rout. Doubleday's line on McPherson's Ridge and Oak Ridge will need to hold long enough for an ordered retreat to be possible. Howard tells Doubleday's aides, "Hold out, if possible, a while longer, for I am expecting General Slocum every moment." We will zoom back into Schurz's corps north of town. Schurz is preparing his corps to retire south of town to Cemetery Hill. Ames' division has nearly retreated to town, but not all of Ames' men have retreated. Companies from the 17th Connecticut are in action as skirmishers. They stand in front of a giant rebel wave. Koster's brigade from Steinwehr's division has arrived and is in line with its left against the Harrisburg Road. On the other side of the road is Heckman's battery. Early's division and Doles' brigade are advancing. The 17th Connecticut skirmishes, falling back as the tide approaches. Heckman's battery opens fire. Ames' division continues to withdraw. Doles and Gordon approach Chisanovsky. Chisanovsky is now engaged. Hayes and Avery push the 17th Connecticut skirmishers back. The skirmishers retreat back to town. The Union right flank is facing increasingly long odds. Koster's brigade is facing two approaching rebel brigades, Hayes and Avery. Koster is the only infantry available to slow this advance. If Hayes and Avery break through to town, Schimmelfennig's division will not be able to retreat to Cemetery Hill. Despite the long odds, Koster and Shizanovsky are providing enough delay for Ames' division to retreat into town. However, Schimmelfennig's division, holding the position further up the road, has no cover for a retreat. We will zoom into Schimmelfennig's division. I have removed some of the modern development to make the field open as it was in 1863. Schimmelfennig's division has two brigades, von Amsberg on the left and Shizanovsky on the right. Carlisle Street, also called Biglerville Road today, divides the two brigades. Von Amsberg's brigade is aligned from left to right with the 45th New York, the 74th Pennsylvania, the 61st Ohio, the 82nd Illinois, and the 157th New York. Von Amsberg had earlier sent skirmishers forward. Behind von Amsberg are two batteries, Dilger and Wheeler, who have been dueling with rebel batteries at Oak Hill to the northwest, hence von Amsberg's facing in this direction. Shizanovsky's regiments from left to right are the 82nd Ohio at Carlisle Street, the 75th Pennsylvania, the 119th New York, the 26th Wisconsin, and a few companies of the 58th New York on the right. Doles and Gordon fire. Shizanovsky responds. Doles' right flank overlaps Shizanovsky. The 82nd Ohio takes enfilading fire. Ohio pulls back. Shizanovsky's right flank is also endangered. The 58th New York and then the 26th Wisconsin are taking enfilading fire. Von Amsberg counters. The 157th New York advances up the Carlisle Street to confront Doles' flank. But the Georgians close in. Fire is exchanged. The rebel lines come closer. General Schurz described the fighting as almost hand-to-hand struggle. In 15 minutes, the 75th Pennsylvania loses 111 men. Shizanovsky must fall back. The 119th New York provides covering fire for the retreat. Shizanovsky's brigade has sustained horrific losses, with every one of his regimental leaders killed or wounded. Von Amsberg remains. The 157th New York pulls back. Wheeler and Dilger's batteries turn to face the approaching Georgians. Canister is blasted, but the rebels keep coming. Doles and von Amsberg clash. With Shizanovsky pulled out, it's two rebel brigades against one Union brigade. Von Amsberg has no other support. His brigade will also need to retreat to town before it is cut off. We will zoom out to a wider vantage point. Two out of the three of Schurz's divisions, Ames and now Schimmelfennig, are now in retreat. Doles and Early have thrown back two-thirds of Schurz's corps. On Oak Ridge, Paul's right is wide open. On the opposite side, Heath's division advances up McPherson's Ridge with Pender's division following behind. However, Gamble's brigade from Buford's cavalry is moving to support the Union left flank. Worcester is now occupied by threats coming from the west and the north. We will zoom into Worcester's position. The railroad cut in yellow separates Worcester from Daniel. By 3:45, the 32nd North Carolina from Daniel's brigade has crossed the railroad cut. The 32nd North Carolina moves towards McPherson's barn here, but Worcester's Pennsylvania Bucktails throw back North Carolina. However, the 32nd North Carolina is now on the same side of the railroad cut. And Brockenbrough is now up. The 55th Virginia on Brockenbrough's left is now linked with the 32nd North Carolina on Daniel's right. The 32nd North Carolina now acts as a bridge between Brockenbrough and Daniel. Worcester is now flanked. Meanwhile, down the line, Pettigrew is also up to McPherson's Ridge. We will slide down McPherson's Ridge to the Union left and switch to a west-facing vantage point. We are now looking west from McPherson's Ridge on the Union left. Worcester's brigade at McPherson's barn is at the right. Brockenbrough's left regiments are now engaged with Worcester. Brockenbrough's right regiments continue up through Herbst Woods. Meredith's regiments, regathered at the ridgeline, are at center. These regiments are smaller because they have been thinned by casualties. Biddle's brigade forms the extreme left brigade on Doubleday's line. Pettigrew is now coming up to face Biddle. Brockenbrough and Pettigrew approach the ridgeline. Biddle's brigade from right to left is the 142nd Pennsylvania, the 20th New York State Militia, sometimes shown as the 80th New York, and the 121st Pennsylvania, forming the extreme left of the Union Army. Biddle has only 3 regiments on McPherson's Ridge, as the 151st Pennsylvania had been detached and sent back to Seminary Ridge. Cooper's 1st Pennsylvania Light Battery is placed between the 142nd Pennsylvania and the 20th New York State Militia. Rebel artillery from Harris Ridge is hitting Biddle's line. Cooper's guns sound against the incoming rebel wave. Pettigrew attacks up the slope. His brigade from his right to left is the 52nd North Carolina, the 47th North Carolina, the 11th North Carolina, and the 26th North Carolina. Brockenbrough's right regiments, the 22nd Virginia and the 40th Virginia, move up through Herbst Woods. Biddle's line throws fire into Pettigrew, but North Carolina advances. To the right, Wister's 150th Pennsylvania hammers away against Brockenbrough's left regiments, the 47th Virginia and the 55th Virginia. On the other wing, the 52nd North Carolina moves on Biddle's left flank. North Carolina throws a terrible volley into Biddle's left. Meanwhile, Pender's division is in motion at the front. We will slide back up McPherson's Ridge to Wister's position at the McPherson Barn and return to a north-facing vantage point. We are again facing north. The rebels are hitting Wister from multiple sides. To the north, Daniel's line has advanced again into the railroad cut. Meanwhile, Brockenbrough fires from the west. Daniel's 32nd North Carolina again pushes toward the barn. Wister has no choice but to be bold. He orders the 149th Pennsylvania and the right wing of the 150th Pennsylvania to charge. Rifles again sound from the railroad cut. Wister is wounded, and the brigade command now turns to Dana. The Pennsylvania Bucktails are facing overwhelming numbers from 2 sides. The position cannot be held much longer. We will zoom out. On the Union left, Heath's division is now at McPherson's Ridge battling Doubleday. In the center, Paul remains at Oak Ridge against Ramseur. On the Union right, 2 out of the 3 divisions in Schurz's corps are retreating into Gettysburg. Only Custer's brigade remains on the eastern side of the battlefield. Early's division and Doles' brigade have the opportunity to cut off Schurz's retreating corps from Doubleday's corps. Fry's brigade from Heath's division, which had originally been under Archer and thrown back earlier that day on the first assault on McPherson's Ridge, is now positioned on the Fairfield Road. The Union left is outflanked. Doubleday's line can no longer hold McPherson's Ridge. They are forced back down into a ravine behind McPherson's Ridge. Seminary Ridge is here in purple, the last line of high ground before town. So Heath's second attempt has worked, his division securing McPherson's Ridge below the Chambersburg Pike. Daniel's brigade has secured the ridge line above the Chambersburg Pike. After a whole day's effort, the rebels are now in control of McPherson's Ridge. The Confederates now have a line running from McPherson's Ridge to Oak Hill. The Seminary Ridge, Oak Ridge line in their front is the final high ground position before the town of Gettysburg. Heath and Daniel push again. This time the rebels have the high ground. Doubleday's left brigades, Biddle, Meredith, and Dana, have no choice but to pull back to Seminary Ridge, putting them adjacent to Baxter and Paul on Oak Ridge. Gamble's cavalry troopers are approaching Seminary Ridge, taking positions on the left flank. Meanwhile, on the Union right, Custer's brigade is now engaged with Avery and Hayes. Custer will not be able to stop this push. The retreating lines on the right are in serious danger. Gettysburg only has so many streets, and thousands of men have caused a foot traffic jam. It's possible that Jubal Early's division will control the town, cutting off Doubleday from Cemetery Hill. Thus, Schurz's corps may make it to Cemetery Hill, but there is no guarantee that Doubleday's corps will make it to that same high ground. Doubleday's corps has been in the fight all day. Ammunition is low or out in many regiments, and many regiments have thinned substantially. Even more ominous is the appearance of Pender's division on McPherson's Ridge, that division entirely fresh and prepared to continue the rebel gains. We will zoom in to Seminary Ridge. I have removed some modern development and expanded some of the tree lines to make the landscape more like 1863. The Union regiments are shown smaller due to the high casualties sustained in these units. The Lutheran Seminary is here, and the ridgeline extends here. In 1863, there was a patch of woods in front of the seminary like the woods remaining here today. I expanded the tree line to better match the historical landscape. A peach orchard extended in front of Seminary Ridge adjacent to the Chambersburg Pike here. Many of the fatigued units in Doubleday's line are resupplied at this time. Cutler's thinned ranks are above the pike at the railroad cut. He sends regiments from the railroad cut to Seminary Ridge. Stevens' 5th Maine Battery and Cooper's batteries are set on Seminary Ridge. Stewart's battery is set in the Peach Orchard. The 151st Pennsylvania, earlier detached from Biddle's brigade, is set on Biddle's right. The 151st Pennsylvania is the last fresh regiment left along Doubleday's line. Barricades had been placed earlier in the day on Seminary Ridge, providing a fallback cover position for the defenders. Buford's cavalry troopers are back in action, with Gamble's brigade on the extreme Union left flank. Gamble's troopers are once again dismounted and ready for action. It's about 4 o'clock. Heath's division advances. The tree cover obscures the positions of both sides. Union artillery fires into the rebels. The Union line holds its fire. The rebels come closer. Then the blue line fires. Fry's brigade faces Gamble. So once again, Gamble and Fry, Archer's brigade, the two units who first exchanged fire that morning, meet again. Pettigrew advances into the woods. Pender's division is appearing on McPherson's ridge. Intensive firing continues. Casualties mount. The Iron Brigade, which has been in action all day, is nearing 2/3 casualties. Heath's division still faces determined defenders at Seminary Ridge. On the right flank, Dana's Pennsylvanias in the Peach Orchard have nearly expended their 60-round cartridge boxes, but they will not budge. On the left flank, Gamble's troopers prevent Fry from advancing. The determined defenders have halted Heath. Heath falls back. However, Pender's fresh division is now advancing on Seminary Ridge. We will slide up to Oak Ridge. Paul has been hammering away against Ramseur for some time. But now, Daniel's brigade, with elements from O'Neill and Iverson's previous attacks, is advancing onto Oak Ridge to the left of Paul. The 12th North Carolina is adjoined to the left of Daniel's advancing line. The volleys go back and forth. The casualties mount. Paul is severely wounded, and he is replaced by Colonel Samuel Leonard of the 13th Massachusetts. The rebel lines close in. The 13th Massachusetts charges to the Mummersburg Road. Massachusetts secures over 100 prisoners, but Massachusetts will have to fall back. The blue line is running low of ammunition. Cartridges are scavenged from the fallen. Leonard is wounded, and the command of the brigade will switch again, this time to Adrian Root. Ramseur's brigade keeps up the pressure, forming an arc that now connects with Daniel's brigade. The Union left flank has no support. The rebel arc tightens. The blue line buckles. Root's brigade is driven from its position, and the rebels take many prisoners. The rebels are now in control of Oak Ridge. We will zoom out. It's just after 4 o'clock. Root's brigade, originally Paul's brigade, is now joining the mass retreat to Cemetery Hill. Coster's brigade on the Union right is also in flight to town. In Schurz's corps, only one brigade, Smith's brigade at Cemetery Hill, is not in a retrograde action. All of the other brigades in Schurz's corps are trying to get back to Cemetery Hill. However, Doubleday's position at Seminary Ridge will not be able to withstand a new attack from Pender's fresh division. At Union headquarters at Cemetery Hill, Howard has no update on reinforcements from Sickles or Slocum, the nearest Union corps. Howard sends word to Doubleday that he has permission to make a retrograde action toward Cemetery Hill. Meanwhile, Steinwehr's cannons on Cemetery Hill fire long distance upon the approaching rebel lines. General Winfield Scott Hancock has arrived on the battlefield. He proceeds to Howard's headquarters on Cemetery Hill. He informs Howard that General Meade has given him field command. With Hancock now in field command, Howard returns to the command of the 11th Corps, replacing Schurz. We will zoom into Doubleday's line at Cemetery Ridge. Heath's division has pulled back and Pender is up. Pender's brigades are Scales on the left at the Chambersburg Pike, Perrin in the center, and Lane on the right. Perrin is sometimes shown as McGowan, but Abner Perrin is in command of the brigade at Gettysburg. Pender has another brigade under Thomas, which was held at Hare's Ridge in reserve. Doubleday's weary line prepares for another wave. On the Union left, only Gamble's troopers stand against Lane's infantry. On the opposite flank, Scales' North Carolinians engage Dana at the Peach Orchard. Perrin moves up through the woods. Lane and Scales have been halted on the flanks, but Perrin in the center pushes toward Seminary Ridge. We will zoom in to the seminary. I have removed some of the modern buildings and enlarged the woods to better reflect the landscape of 1863. Perrin's brigade comes up the woods toward the seminary. Abner Perrin is about to meet Abner Doubleday. Perrin's regiments from left to right are the 12th South Carolina, the 13th South Carolina, the 14th South Carolina, and the 1st South Carolina. Then, Biddle unleashes a sudden volley. Stevens and Cooper's batteries at the seminary fire on the rebels. Perrin's South Carolinians suffer terrible casualties, but maintain a position in the woods. Perrin will not back down. Instead of facing the defenders head-on, he will strike obliquely through on either side. He divides his brigade in half. The two left regiments, the 12th South Carolina and the 13th South Carolina, change front to the northeast and will strike toward the seminary. Perrin's right two regiments, the 14th South Carolina and the 1st South Carolina, angle southeast. Instead of hitting against Biddle in the woods, they will face Gamble's troopers. We will zoom back to a wider vantage point. Perrin will not get snagged in the woods. He has obliqued his regiments to cut across his front instead of push against it. Gamble's troopers, now facing Lane and two regiments from Perrin's brigade simultaneously, pull back. Lane and Perrin secure that flank. On the opposite flank at the Chambersburg Pike, Daniel's brigade has moved onto Oak Ridge above. Baxter and some of Cutler's regiments retreat back to town. Other regiments from Cutler remain on Seminary Ridge. With Daniel on Oak Ridge, Dana's right flank is now exposed. Scales' brigade overpowers the Peach Orchard, driving Dana back. Pender's division is boxing in the remaining Union defenders at the seminary. Perrin's left regiments and Scales' brigade push up toward the seminary. Doubleday's final position is about to be attacked. We will zoom into the seminary and assume a west-facing vantage point. We are facing west. The landscape has been modified to better approximate conditions in 1863. The Chambersburg Pike is here in yellow on the right. The Peach Orchard is adjacent to the pike here. Corps Commander Abner Doubleday remains at the seminary building, directing his remaining units. Doubleday's remaining troops here are the last engaged United States forces on the field. All other units from all sectors are retreating to town. Doubleday's job now is to provide delaying time for the army to get through town to Cemetery Hill. The remnants of Meredith's Iron Brigade, whose unit casualties are exceeding those still standing, hold a rail barricade to the right and in front of the seminary. On their left are the remnants of Biddle's brigade. On the right are units from Dana and Cutler. Perrin and Scales advance. Cooper and Stevens' guns boom from the campus. Rifles roar in front of the seminary. Doubleday needs to get his men back to town before they are surrounded. The 151st Pennsylvania had 446 men before the fight at Seminary Ridge. Only 113 will remain. The blue lines peel off Seminary Ridge for town. It's time for Doubleday to get his last regiments off Seminary Ridge before they are captured. The regiments retreat back toward town. Stevens and Cooper's batteries limber up and pull off the seminary. Finally, the Iron Brigade pulls off. The rebels approach. The 149th Pennsylvania from Dana's brigade holds the seminary long enough for Doubleday to get his last men, artillery, and ambulances off Seminary Ridge. The 7th Wisconsin of the Iron Brigade helps form up the rear, taking tremendous fire during the retreat. General Doubleday remains at the seminary until the rebel lines are on the campus. The Iron Brigade, which had been among the first Union infantry on the field that day, is now among the last to leave. We will zoom out. It's about 4:15. The last Union brigades are now in retreat from Seminary Ridge toward Gettysburg. The rebels have succeeded in securing McPherson's Ridge, Seminary Ridge, Oak Ridge, and Barlow Knoll. At Union headquarters on Cemetery Hill, General Hancock oversees a mass retreat. 2 corps are trying to get back through the town to the heights at Cemetery Hill. These thousands of retreating Union soldiers have caused a foot traffic jam in Gettysburg. The confusion is worsened by the realization that the rebels have not stopped advancing. The thousands of Union soldiers now trying to get through the narrow roads of Gettysburg to Cemetery Hill are in danger of capture. Meanwhile, Pender, Rhodes, and Early close in. Hancock needs to act fast to avoid a disaster.